Let's talk about what to do in the final weeks leading up to the day of the exam itself, especially how to prepare using the experimental section. Now, in my LSAT study schedules, you may have noticed that I recommend that you include extra sections in your practice tests, aside from the 4 published in the LSAT versions. You might be wondering why I would recommend something like this. As you've seen when we discussed how long test day will be, there is that experimental section. LSAC is basically using test takers as lab rats. Like many organizations that administer standardized exams, think back to the SAT. LSAC includes this unscored experimental section and doesn't tell you which one it is, because if you knew which one it was, you'd probably take a nap to recuperate between the sections you care the most about, the scored ones. But there's a good reason for this. The experimental sections actually allow LSAC to pre-test questions with several thousand applicants, which helps them determine which questions deserve to make it into future scored sections. Of course, this isn't great for you, because not knowing which section the experimental is can make it difficult to decide whether to cancel your score on test day if things don't go well. Of course, you could always look online on forums where you'll find out those details. But if you were to bomb the experimental, it could have no impact. At the same time, though, if you bomb it, it could then psychologically affect your performance later. And of course, there's the downside that being forced to spend 35 minutes doing unpaid research for LSAC isn't really quite fair. But it is what it is. Now, because you'll see a 5-section exam on test day rather than just 4, it's essential to prepare with that in mind. One student, Katie, wrote to me with the following question. She asked me, "I've been taking 4-section time tests for a while now, but I'm starting to take 5- and 6-section timed exams as you suggest. I assume that the type of extra sections I include should vary from test to test. So maybe on one day I do a game section, another day a reading comp or LR section. Is this what you would recommend?" Great question, Katie. Absolutely yes. 2 ways you can handle this. One is that you could rotate the type of extra section you use based on its content. So you could do 4 normal sections, then an extra games, or 4 normal sections, an extra section of reading comp, etc. But you could also make the extra section the one that you like the least. And doing a combination of both of these strategies is probably ideal. So figure out what you dread the most and include it a bit more often than the others. Here's some more questions that students commonly ask. Where should I place the unscored section? Previously, in past years, it used to be that the unscored experimental would be only in one of the first 3 sections. But they've changed things, so if you read that online, it's outdated. Now, it can be any one of the 5 sections. So it's unfortunate that you might have to take the unscored section earlier when you're less tired, but just remember that everyone else is in the same boat. They're affected just the same way. The most important thing, though, is mixing up sections. On test day, of course, you won't know which is the experimental. So for this reason, you might want to lay out the sections from each exam beforehand. Take the 4 from the scored exam and 1 unscored experimental and mix them together. That way, you won't know which ones are scored and which ones aren't, and you'll be forced to put the same effort into each. Take this for example. You could do exams numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then take exam number 5 and divide it into its 4 sections and take exam 5, section 1, put it inside exam number 1, mix them around so you don't know which is which. Do the same for the other sections of exam 5 in exams 2, 3, and 4. Then later, you could add up your results from exam 5, which you've taken on 4 separate occasions, or at least parts of it. You add those together, you get a resulting score from that. This is what you want to be doing in your final weeks primarily. Full-length tests, starting with a few 4-section exams, and gradually moving up to 5-section exams. To avoid burnout, space out full-length timed exams across the week, not doing 2 in one day, and not doing them on consecutive days. So that's pretty much my basic guidelines. I have a schedule laid out for you along with this video so that you can get some more tips on what to do as those final weeks come to a close.